purpose of this presentation is to talk through some changes that we've made to the Visio Schedule of Rates guidance document. A guidance document has been produced. It is a guidance document. It is not a set of rules, but it does outline the approach that should be taken in the majority of occasions. We accept that each property, claim, repair is unique, and that a BCI might look at something slightly differently, might want to do the repair perhaps in a different way. That's perfectly acceptable so long as the BCI fully annotates the reason for their decision. An internal audit has been undertaken by the quality team within Field Technical Services, and external audits are undertaken by clients. As a result of these audits, we've made a number of changes which are designed, as we've said there, to make scheduling simpler. First of all, I want to talk about complexity and luxury. So when BCI goes in and sets up their schedule, they have an option to change the complexity and luxury factors. Complexity relates to how difficult the work will be. It may be difficult because it's finished to a very high standard in terms of workmanship. There may be access issues because it's in central London. It may be that the property is 4 stories tall and we're working on the upper level. Luxury relates to the quality and the type of finishes. It may be that the property is luxuriously finished, like in central London, with beautiful finishings and furnishings, and the BCI wants to allow extra to take into account the extra care and attention that contractors will have to take when undertaking repairs. There's also listed buildings, and we may want to consider a change to reflect that. If the BCI wants to change the complexity and luxury factors, then we need to provide appropriate justification. Where additional labour is needed due to access issues, complexity of work, etc., this should be accounted for by changing the complexity factor rather than adding in additional labour. We shouldn't be frightened of changing the complexity and luxury factors. They're there to allow a BCI to reflect additional costs. We just need to make sure that we fully justify what we are doing. If we look at the hierarchy, so where there is an appropriate line item, this must be used. It's fairly straightforward. There'll be certain situations where there isn't an exact line item. So one example might be glossing a door, for example. There is glossing less than 300 millimetres, but there is no rate for glossing over 300 millimetres. The BCI might want to use the glossing less than 300 millimetres, allow perhaps 2 or 3 of them to take into account the width of the door. That's acceptable. We can do that. We can use similar items so long as we fully annotate and give a reason. If there are no appropriate line items, then we can schedule the work using a combination of labour only and then a start item for materials. As an exception, if the work is very specialised, and a couple of examples there, thatching or ornate coving, then we can use a star item to cover the labour and the materials. Star items. This is a key issue. Both Aviva and RSA have raised concerns about the way that we are using and, more importantly, validating star items. Aviva is our most important client. We need to improve in this area. Where we add a star item, we should include a detailed description of the item. We should include a quantity. It could be a numbered item, it could be just one item if it's a specialist chandelier. However, if it's wallpaper, if it's tiling, we need to confirm how much. We can allow a wastage allowance, and we need to validate the cost. And the simple rule is that we should add sufficient annotation so that somebody else can go into the schedule and be able to cross-check the amount that has been allowed. So simply saying validated via B&Q is not adequate. If, however, we give a fully detailed description of the item so that anybody else can go onto the B&Q website and select that item and confirm the cost, that's acceptable. Star items should always be added in the schedule net of VAT, VAT is added on at the end. We can use labour only items. As we said there are a number of labour only rates included in the schedule of rates. We do need to annotate and give a reason why we are using them. This should detail the reason and why a certain number of hours have been allowed. Again, clients have raised concerns in recent audits that we are allowing a certain number of hours which seem excessive on the basis of the work being undertaken. It is accepted that if you're sending an electrician, a plumber to site, they're not going to go to site for 5 minutes work. They will charge a minimum amount to take into account their travel, the cost of fuel, etc. We are removing the minimum labour allowance rates from the schedule of rates, and what we're saying is the BCI can allow the minimum by using the labour only rates. As we said there, a comment must be added into the schedule to confirm the reason why we have done this. Protections, again, this is another item that our clients have raised some concerns with. Within the schedule of rate line items, there is an allowance for dust sheets, polythene and any basic non-impact protection. So if we're just decorating a room, for example, then we would expect the decorator to put dust sheets down and there should be no additional allowance. Where there is the risk of mostly impact damage to perhaps an expensive floor, as an example, then the BCI can add an additional allowance for room protection. There is a rate within the schedule of rates for a dust-proof screen. This is to be used when we are closing an area of work off. So if we're working in a hall and there's a stairs and landing, then we can block off the hall so it doesn't affect the stairs and landing. We're not going to include this item very often, and where we do, we need to include the reason and also the area that we need to protect. In terms of external protection, again, the schedule of rate line items include for some non-impact protection. The BCI can include additional protection, if there's the risk that something's going to get damaged because something's going to fall on it, such as a blocked paved driveway. Debris removal, again, this is another area that has come up in terms of audit. There is an element of waste disposal built into the schedule of rate line items. As a guideline, as we said there, up to sort of 5 metres squared worth of plasterwork, something that you could put in a bag and place in the back of a van. Where additional waste is required, we need to add a comment into our schedule just giving the reason for it. Working at height, this is where we have made some changes. Again, within the line items, there is an allowance for internal working at height. What we basically said is that whereas the original rule suggested up to 3 metres, we've now reduced that. So what we said is up to 2.6 metres. So basically, where work is being undertaken at a height of over 2.6 or to hall stairs and landing, then we can add that rate there, INA CC 002, maximum of 2 per property. So if you've got a hall stairs and landing and you've got a living room ceilings 2.8, hall stairs and landing, then we can allow 2. If we've got hall stairs and landing, 2 rooms, lounge and a kitchen, both with a ceiling over 2.6, we still restrict it to 2 at this rate. Just to summarise up and add some additional comments here. So when adding a room to TPS, there is no requirement to include doors or windows. Effectively, we only need to take the door or window into account if it's more than 50% of the individual wall area. If we're including take off and refix a radiator, a comment needs to be included in the schedule. And we need to take a photograph showing it's decorated behind. Release and resecuring electrical switch, socket place and the like is included within the decorating rate. Electrical tests are an area of debate and possibly an area of some confusion. what we're basically saying here is that where a full electrical test is required, then we need to include a comment justifying the reason for it. If a partial test is required, then we should use the electrician labour only item. We can take into account that an electrician is not going to go to site for £20. They're going to want a minimum number of hours, probably 4. So just to sum up, we will be providing a copy of the schedule of rate rules. We'll also provide a copy of this presentation. We will be arranging a conference call so that BCIs can join the conference call if they want further clarification. We are going to carry out audits. We currently do, but we're going to carry out more audits, and we're going to give appropriate feedback. And finally, the key to all this is to ensure that when we add an item into a schedule, if it's an unusual item, if it's a star item, if it's a labour only item, that we provide appropriate justification for it. We recently had an RSA audit, and this related to a combination of BCI and domestic adjusters, and they were looking through, and because there were comments added, they were accepting what we'd said. Because we had thought about it, because we'd given justification, they were accepting what we said and were really impressed with the work that we'd undertaken. So thanks very much for your time.